sun is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. We have all your action for the Geico 500 from Talladega Motor Speedway. Yes, I said we. Liehr was here originally. I want to apologize for the fact that I'm having to refilm. We had some technical issues. Liehr gave some awesome breakdowns, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you him saying it. I'm going to have to do some of it, and hopefully I do justice for the both of us filling in. But I'm having to do the show solo, so hopefully the show will go off without a hitch, and hopefully we can all get some good information and possibly make some good money this week at playing some daily fantasy. The stages this week are at laps 55, laps 110, and then we'll race the final 78 laps to the finish at 188. What that tells you is there's not a lot of laps, which means there's not going to be a lot of points for the quote-unquote dominators, the guys that lead laps and get the fastest laps. There's just not as many of those to go around, therefore they're much less of a premium than normal. What traditionally happens at these restrictor plate tracks is the place differential is the absolute premium. We've even seen things as crazy as the winning lineup having not the winning race car driver on that lineup, and we've seen the winning lineup be nothing but cars starting 30th through 40th, which was also a crazy week for racing. Just remember the way the scoring works in NASCAR and the way it's going to break down at this track, place differential is going to be the ultimate premium. So when we're talking about, when I'm talking about these guys tonight, so when I'm going through these picks, what I'm going to be doing instead of reiterating the same thing over and over again is I just want to remind everyone up front, place differential is the premium. We don't really care about who's going to win the race necessarily. There's one exception to that, and that exception is if that person dominates roughly at least 80 laps and finishes 1 to 3. That gets them roughly in the right amount of points where they should be able to be on the winning lineup. But that is a very risky thing here. As Liehr's fun fact was, only 13% of the time has the guy that started on the pole ended up winning the race here. And the last time it was done was last year by Sticky Ricky, which may cause people to gravitate towards playing Harvick sitting on the pole. I think you're much better off going with tradition, what we've seen at the restrictor plate races, which is avoiding basically most of the top 10 drivers. And we're going to get into that just a little bit. But before we do, I need to tell you the weather for this weekend should be sunny with temperatures in the upper 60s. Just absolutely fabulous weather for racing. I'm super excited to see him race under the Talladega sun. Under the Alabama sun in Talladega when we go racing at 2 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. I know we're not putting this video up with a whole lot of time for you to get it in, for you to watch it, so we're going to try to keep it short and sweet since I'm already having to refilm it and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But hey, I'm gonna get you all the content, kids. That's how much we love you guys and love this community. I'm still committed to doing this at 3 a.m. after the Avengers movie. This week, Liehr and I had something a little different planned for you, and we did a little bit different of a show where we were basically running through the entire field of drivers from bottom to top and basically telling you which guys we liked. But the problem that we had while we were filming the show is that any of these guys could be a play. The main thing that you need to pay attention to from 30th on back, because a lot of these are the quote-unquote questionable cars with questionable equipment, is you want to make sure that any of these cars are going to actually finish the race, right? Because when you're playing the cars 30th on back, Brendan Gaughan, DJ Kennington, Timothy Peters, even Dibenedetto, Joey Gase, Ross Chastain, Cole Witt, Greg Galding, Reed Sorensen, and Timmy Hill, what you're banking on is you're banking on those cars being so far back and out of the carnage that anytime carnage happens, they literally gain place differential spots. And we've seen this actually work a couple of times. Now, in all probability, a few of those guys are going to be required to be on the winning lineup. Now, the problem is when I tell you my favorite guys, most of those guys are going to be the favorites for everyone that are picking, just because they're that obvious of a play. And Liehr was advocating when we were filming the show earlier, that it might not make instinctual sense to you, but the more less known a guy is and the more risky the play is, the actual more benefit it can gain you at a restrictor plate track, because you're going to get that low ownership. And as long as they can avoid the carnage and as long as their equipment holds up, they can be on the winning lineup. And that only basically happens at these restrictor plates, right? Other than one random guy maybe for salary relief, but multiple ones of these guys. So the first guy that I really like, that I think is just a dynamite play, is Matt Dibenedetto starting 33rd. The problem is he may be way high owned by the field, and ownership percentage is something that you really want to pay attention to at a restrictor plate track, because at a restrictor plate track, there's a extremely high probability of any given car on the track getting into a wreck. And if the ownership percentage of said driver exceeds the probability that he gets in a wreck, you actually gain a position, like strategy-wise, over the field by not playing that guy. So will I do that in most instances? No. Could it be to the detriment of me? Probably so. Is Liehr probably going to swerve a little more with craziness? From what he said earlier today, I would believe he is. Hopefully one of these strategies works out for one of us this week, and whatever version of those strategies you employ will work out for you as well. But I think that pretty much wraps up what we want to talk about, that bottom group of guys starting 30th through 40th, except for the easiest play, which is the chalk play of chalk plays, in my opinion. But once again, you might want to ask yourself if you should fade just off the chance that he can get caught up into a wreck. Is Aric Almirola starting 40th? He had equipment issues during qualifying, and that's why he's starting at the rear of the field. His price is not crazy. It's actually down 200 from last week and down 1,000 from 2 weeks ago. This guy has been nothing but fantasy goodness all season long. And here's the crazy part. If he doesn't get caught up in carnage and he gets to the top 20, he's going to be a required play on a lineup. That's going to drive up his ownership percentage astronomically. It might be an interesting fade. Once again, I don't know that I'm going to actually be able to fade him, especially since you're going to see that you need a little bit of salary relief, but not a whole lot this week. It's not super hard to fit your lineups together unless you want to play a couple of the really crazy price guys. So we wrapped up the bottom 30. Now it's time to talk about the drivers in the 20 through 29 range. In my opinion, this is one of the sweet spots for the guys that are going to be on the winning lineup. Michael Mcdowell and Trevor Bayne are both guys that are way overqualified for what they are and how they race traditionally. I like Michael McDowell better. Liehr was liking Trevor Bayne better. And the reason why Liehr liked Trevor Bayne better was because he has a history of doing well at restrictor plate tracks. His lone win that got him this ride was at the Daytona 500, a restrictor plate track. Trevor Bayne traditionally runs good here, and he's been such hot, wet garbage for the fantasy season that he might not have anyone hardly owning him. And that ownership percentage could be beneficial to you when it's all said and done. The reason why I like Michael McDowell is the same reason. I think people will think he's overqualified. I think you might be able to squeeze him in there. He might still be able to get a top 10 like he did at the Daytona 500. In that scenario, he's well worth it. But once again, the odds say that the cars below him are actually going to outpoint him way easier. So, in other words, it might not be a play that you want to make at all, which, once again, will drive down ownership percentage. So if the crazy happens and you're on him, you could win quite a bit. The guys that I really like playing that I think are really interesting this week are the next grouping here. Kyle Larson starting 22nd, Ryan Blaney starting 23rd, and Austin Dillon starting 24th. All of those guys are in top-notch equipment. They have all shown that they can race really well at a restrictor plate track. I think that a few of those cars are going to be on the required lineup. And another couple of guys that are probably going to be on that required lineup, maybe the likes of the guys right behind them. And Chris Buescher starting 25th, Kasey Kahne starting 26th. The real problem with Kasey Kahne isn't that he's not overperforming in that car. Like, he's performing well, like taking that Levine family car to the 20s where it normally finishes out. But that's just not good enough for fantasy purposes, and I will be fading Kasey Kahne this week. He has not put up enough points to be on a required lineup all season. Now, I know a restrictor plate could be the difference, and if Kasey Kahne's one of those guys that gets through and racks up all the points, my lineups will probably just go down in flames. But you've got to take stands in fantasy NASCAR, even at a restrictor plate, because you don't have infinite resources to just dump into these lineups unless you just want to light money on fire, right? So one of the places that I'm personally taking a stand will be that I will not be playing Kasey Kahne unless for some reason I have to for salary relief. But here's why I don't think I will, like you'll ever need to. Chris Buescher's cheaper than he is at 6,100. I think that's a better play. I think the Mcdowell play is a better play. You have all the guys starting in the back that I think are better plays that are cheaper than him. And we have the next guy that we were getting ready to talk about, AJ Allmendinger. Well, actually, the next guy is supposed to be Jamie Mack. You know my feelings, guys, if you watch the show on Jamie Mack. Starting 27th, that is a plethora of place differential potential for the type of car and the type of driver you're getting there. He seemed to have snapped his streak of not racing well. I think Jamie McMurray snapped out of the funk at the O'Reilly Auto Parts 500, where he finished third and put up a 63 fantasy points wise. These are the type of fantasy points that these guys are going to put up, and that's before you include, most of the time, the cars that get the fastest lap are going to be somewhere in the draft. They're not going to be the lead car. So these cars are going to actually get the fastest laps. Not that there's a lot of them, but those points get funneled down to anywhere but the lead car, basically. The next guy that we're looking at and going to talk about is AJ Allmendinger. The Dinger, traditionally known as a road course racer. I have absolutely no problem playing Dinger this week, and he is criminally underpriced at $5,900. Starting 28th, price $5,900. It should be a free square, in my opinion. We've seen this car place in the top 10 multiple times this year. Well, twice. But we've also seen this car run into the teens. There's a lot of potential here, a lot of salary relief. Allmendinger may make an interesting pivot play that a lot of people won't be on. The final guy we're going to quickly talk about in this tier is Ty Dillon. And I would love to play Ty Dillon, and I think he might be the right play this week. He's got a great place differential position, and we've seen it out of him before at these restrictor plates, even though he's fairly new to restrictor plates on the Monster Cup circuit. The real problem with Ty Dillon is that even when he's in the right position, there is a DFS tout that tells everybody to play Ty Dillon every weekend because he loves Ty Dillon and thinks he's a BFF of Ty Dillon. It artificially raises the ownership percentage of Ty Dillon more than it ever should be, and that's what scares me. Although he's in a great position again this week at a restrictor plate, but when you have all of that guy's followers jumping on that guy constantly, it makes sense to play other guys. That may be a position that I also choose to make this week, where I'm just not going to play Ty Dillon because I know that ownership percentage is going to be off and weird based on that one guy recommending him basically every race, and his followers just eat it up. It's ridiculous. All right, kids. So we covered the bottom half of the qualifiers, 20th on back. Now things get interesting, and now I'm going to kind of invert, and I'm going to go 19-1. And the reason why is because I think the more you go up, the less you want to play these guys. The first in this range is Rowdy Kyle Busch, starting 19th. Now, I have no idea what DraftKings is thinking, other than whoever prices guys at DraftKings is smoking crack. And I mean, not just a little crack, I mean, smoking a lot of crack. The guy that won 3 consecutive races dropped to $9,600. They literally dropped his price almost $2,000, $1,800, after he won 3 consecutive races, and before that, it was second, third, second. So, the best statistical driver in NASCAR this season, you decrease the price on, And oh wait, this is even better. Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick. Like Kevin Harvick could be more than him, but Chase Elliott, Logano, Hamlin, Kez. Just because of track history, I get why he's ahead of him. But man, on the streak Kyle Busch is on, there is no reason why Kyle Busch is sub 10K, and it is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. So Rowdy is underpriced, qualified in 19th, has the ability to give you awesome place differential. I think it may be one of the right plays this week, and it may be a guy that you really want to reach up and grab. Ryan Newman's another one of those guys that you may want to go after, as he has 12 top 10 finishes and 6 top 5s in his 32 races here. Starting 18th, if he can make it into the top 5, he should get enough points that would be on one of the required lineups. That makes an interesting play. William Byron and his teammate Jimmy Johnson starting 17th and 16th. Those are also interesting plays. William Byron may be the lowest, will be lower owned than Jimmy even, most likely, and could be an interesting pivot for you. Darrell Wallace Jr., we've seen him be a little over-owned for what he is, but man, the guy has been lighting it up. I'm just worried that that car is going to revert to its old ways, and I realize Bubba's driving the wheels off of it, and I realize he was leading the Daytona 500 to the last lap and finished second there. It may be an awesome play this week. I don't know that I'm going to make it. The reason being is I think that more people might be on him because of the Daytona 500 finish. Liehr seemed to have the opposite opinion, so I just wanted to flush that out there, that there are people that are advocating that you should play Bubba Wallace. Then you have Daniel Suarez. We know that Toyota equipment, but once you get to the, like, you're in 14th, and you start seeing that Daniel Suarez needs to get a top 5 finish at least, and even if he has a top 5 finish, he's going to be on the fringe of scoring enough points. Paul Menard is absolutely out of the question. He hasn't been required to be on the winning lineup once this season. I know the Wood brothers traditionally have good results at restrictor plate races, and once again, anything could happen. I'm not sure I want to play Paul Menard. I think I'm going to take a stand and just say that guy has not been required to be on the winning lineup at all this season. I'm going to avoid him like the plague. Next, you have David Ragan. I love what this team has done. You heard why I liked playing Michael McDowell, who's 8 spots behind him, but those 8 spots are very pivotal for place differential points. However, David Ragan could be an interesting play from an ownership perspective. He does have a win at a restrictor plate, as anything can happen. Now that I've started to climb into these guys in the top 15, the window closes every time. Every time you go up a position, the window closes even more on how perfect they have to be and how the race has to break down just perfectly for these guys to be on the winning lineup. The one exception to that would be Keselowski, in my opinion, and that would be because of his track history here with the 5 wins. I also think it's interesting that he's at that 10s position, which we've seen the 10-1 happen. Actually, it's 9-1 happen a couple of times this season. That has been great with place differential and the finishing position. Get you on the winning lineup. That very well may happen. Kez and his teammate Logano starting right in front of him. Both of those could be interesting play. But now we're getting into the territory of guys that I'm just saying hell no to. I won't own unless I'm trying to do something crazy. One of those is Clint Boyer, starting 8th. I love what Clint Boyer's doing. It's nice to have him back and at his winning ways. In order for Boyer and the rest of these guys to have to be required on your lineup, and this applies to Clint Boyer, Stenhouse, Eric Jones, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Truex, Kurt Busch, Harvick. They are all going to need to at least do what Boyer did the last time he went out and dominated a race and won. The reason being is because anytime carnage happens anywhere, those cars in the back are going to jump. And if there's any carnage at all that we've seen in these tracks in the past where we lose 10, 15, even 20 cars, it's all over for any of those guys that you played at the top, unless they're just sheer dominators. And the only one that's actually went 1-1 in recent history is Sticky Ricky, and when he did, he didn't super dominate. I think the trend is to get away from the dominators. I honestly, truly believe that I haven't finished my lineups for this week, but I don't think I will play anyone higher than number 9, and I think I'm only going to have one lineup, possibly, that's a Kes lineup. Everything else, I'm going place differential solidly. So if it is a guy that dominates this race and somehow gets in front and leads a bunch of laps, I will probably lose all my money this week and not have a very good fantasy week. But that's just traditionally how this race breaks down. You don't want any of those cars in the top 10. But then again, that could drive down ownerships crazy, because all of the people that know how to play fantasy NASCAR at these restrictor plates are telling the people that that's what you want to do. So I guess crazier things could happen, but traditionally it doesn't, and that's why I would go with a back the pack strategy. I think that pretty much wraps up the show for today. Well, kids, I feel like if I go into too much more detail on these guys, I'm just going to sound like a broken record and keep being overly repetitive. I think we gave you the best info we could, and hopefully that information leads us to some fantasy goodness this weekend, and we can win some money. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully I did a good enough job without Liehr being here. Like I said, totally my fault. We filmed earlier. Totally my fault that it's coming out late. I had a technical malfunction. And even though I can't control my computer, I will take credit for it. So that's on me, guys. But we wanted to make sure to get this out to you, and hopefully you guys enjoyed another week of the Rubbin' His Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.